We've got some great titles of things that Mr. Davis presented to me.
Picture this. Detroit, 1998. The historic Opera House is glowing with chandeliers, velvet seats brimming with celebrities, producers, and dignitaries, all gathered to pay tribute to one woman, the Queen of Soul. But behind the scenes, tension crackled like static. Aretha Franklin sat alone in her dressing room, statuesque and silent, but visibly furious. Her assistant hovered nervously. Aretha closed her makeup case, stared her assistant square in the eye, and delivered a calm but cutting verdict. "If he sings tonight, I walk." The event descended into chaos. Organizers scrambled to rework the show, but Aretha didn't need to raise her voice to control a room. One glance, one sentence, that was all it took. For decades, Aretha Franklin held her tongue, gracefully navigating an industry riddled with ego and betrayal. But in her final years, she began to speak out. The list she carried wasn't about petty grudges. It was about deep scars, legacy, and respect. And at the very top of that list, Beyoncé. It was supposed to be a celebration. At the 2008 Grammys, Beyoncé stood poised and radiant as she introduced a legend. Tina Turner, the Queen. The audience roared. But miles away, Aretha Franklin sat in silence, lips pursed. To many, it seemed like a harmless nod. But to Aretha, who had spent a lifetime earning the title, Queen of Soul, through gospel beginnings, civil rights anthems, and sheer vocal brilliance, it felt like an insult wrapped in flattery. That same night, Aretha issued a statement, not naming Beyoncé, but making her message crystal clear. She called the introduction a cheap shot, and lamented the lack of respect. From that moment forward, she drew an unspoken line. No joint events, no shared stage, no photographs. Privately, she referred to Beyoncé as a talented girl who forgot to curtsy. But the Queen's fury didn't end there. Next on her list, a legend who betrayed her in front of the entire country. Ray Charles. It was the 1970s, and the buzz was electric. A live duet between Aretha and Ray Charles was being hyped as a television event of the decade. Rehearsals were joyful and smooth. They laughed, shared stories, harmonized like soul siblings. But when the cameras started rolling, Ray went rogue. He changed the arrangement, extended bridges, added flourishes, leaving Aretha to adapt on the fly. To viewers, it looked spontaneous. To Aretha, it felt calculated. After the show, Ray reportedly joked, "She's great, but not quick on her feet." To Aretha, that was the ultimate disrespect. A master of her craft, belittled by a man she once called a friend. She never performed with him again. Not on television, not on tour, not even in private. He turned a duet into a solo, she told close friends, and me into his punchline. Then came another clash, this time in the studio. Luther Vandross. In the early 1980s, Clive Davis paired Aretha with a rising producer whose talent was already making waves. Luther was precise, meticulous, while Aretha was instinctual, raw, emotional. Creative tension sparked quickly. Luther wanted polish. Aretha brought passion. During one late-night session, Vandros snapped. "Stop over-singing." Silence. Aretha stood up and, with unshakable grace, replied, "Nobody tells the Queen how to reign." She walked out. The album jumped till it was completed and became a hit. But the process was grueling. Every harmony was a battle, every verse a test of wills. They never worked together again. Good music, Aretha later said, but hell to make. But the most shocking wound came from someone outside her genre. Someone who took a swipe at her legacy with just one quote. Keith Richards. In 2007, during a Rolling Stone interview, the Rolling Stones guitarist was asked about soul music. His response: "Soul died with Otis Redding. Aretha's still around, but it's not the same."
To some, it was just a cranky remark. But to Aretha, it was erasure. A denial of decades of soul she had defined, reshaped, and perfected.
She didn't stay silent. On air, she responded with her signature shade. Some people confuse loud guitars with depth. Bless his heart. But behind the scenes, she was incensed. She reportedly refused any event involving Richards or the Stones afterward. Never shared a stage. Never shared a sentence. To Aretha, soul wasn't a genre. It was a legacy, and hers wasn't up for debate. But perhaps the most emotional wound came from someone she'd known for decades. Dionne Warwick. In 2017, while Aretha was battling serious illness, an old comment resurfaced from Whitney Houston's funeral years earlier. Dionne had remarked that Aretha was expected to sing, but never showed. What Dionne didn't say: Aretha had been physically unable to attend. She was grief-stricken, in pain, and emotionally drained. The comment lingered. Then, 5 years later, Aretha responded. A 5-page letter to the Associated Press. Calm but scathing. She accused Dionne of manufacturing drama, of lying publicly, and twisting a sacred event into tabloid fodder. Dionne knows what she did. One sentence. No further elaboration. A feud buried, not with peace, but with finality. And finally, the one name that struck Aretha closer to home than any other. Eminem. Detroit was Aretha's soul. Her roots. Her rhythm. She had given endlessly to the city. Mentoring artists. Singing at benefit concerts. Honoring Detroit in every interview, every lyric. So when Eminem rose to global fame, becoming the new face of Detroit, Aretha expected at least a mention, a nod, a sample. Something. But nothing came. Not one reference, not one lyric. To many, it seemed like a simple omission. But to Aretha, it was a deep and telling silence. At a private dinner, someone asked about Eminem. Aretha reportedly leaned back, shook her head, and said, "He knows who I am. He just chose not to care." And when later asked in an interview what she thought of his lyrics, one word: noise. Aretha Franklin wasn't just a singer. She was a cultural force, a pioneer, a queen who earned her crown in fire and gospel and soul. She carried a legacy on her shoulders, and when anyone tried to rewrite, erase, or disrespect it, she didn't just speak. She roared. If you were moved by the untold side of Aretha's legacy, the feuds, the fire, and the fight behind the crown, make sure to hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to Rock Fame Diaries. Here, we bring the backstage truths of music's biggest legends to life. Thanks for watching, and remember, legends may fall silent, but their echoes never fade. God bless.